Mr. Dick Boak from Martin Guitar. So on the last segment, we talked about the advent of the Signature Series. Mm-hmm. Let's go a little deeper into the Signature Series. Since that was such an important part of your career. Can you tell us, go in depth, maybe some individual guitars or artists that you work with that were really...
Well, almost immediately after Eric, we had such a success. We wrote a check for more than $91,000 to the Eric Clapton Charitable Trust for Children. And so I got a phone call from Marty Stewart. Mm. And Marty was on the phone wanting to do a Hank Williams project. And I said, well, that's a good idea, Marty. Who controls Hank Williams? He said, well, a bunch of lawyers in Chicago, plus his daughter, out of wedlock daughter, and maybe Hank Williams Jr. and the Hank Williams Museum. I don't know. It sounded like a nightmare to me. A complicated web of legal problems. So I said, Marty, I think it's a great idea, but I'd rather do a project with you. And Marty was really honored, and since from the age of 13, he was playing with everybody and playing with Lester Flatt, Bill Monroe, and just an amazing musician. And we knew all about Marty. So Marty got in a plane and flew up to Nazareth and spent the day with maybe 2 days with us, working out the details. He had ideas about everything. He's got this whole kind of Western cowboy horseshoe kind of country motif going on. And we did a fabulous project with him. So that kind of kicked things off. Following on Marty Stewart, did a project with Paul Simon. Being a huge fan of Paul Simon's, especially his songwriting. He's such a poet, I was really pretty nervous working with Paul, but when I met with him, he's not very big. He was fabulous. He was very.
Tell this story though.
Okay, so I had all this stuff trying to impress him. I had some drawings that I brought for him and a bunch of guitars, and it was a freezing cold day in December, and I was trying to think of all his lyrics and everything and how to be clever with them. And I bought orange juice down at the stand outside of his apartment. And I was thinking, drank all the orange juice that we can hold. So I went up and he wasn't there yet. His office people were there. This is in the Brill Building, the famous Brill Building.
All songwriters, great songwriters.
His offices. But he had all of his Grammy Awards and everything. And I sat in there with his guitar person, his tour manager, and his assistant, and just waiting for him to arrive. So it took about 45 minutes, and I had opened up one of the guitar cases. I had a 0042 12 fret that I had made in a custom shop by T.J. Thompson and Martin. It was a beautiful guitar. I brought it to show him and had it on the couch by the front door, and the door opened and kind of creaked, and Paul's there with that parka thing, looking like an Eskimo, and he saw the guitar, picked it up, strummed it once, set it down, said, "I don't think so," and slammed the door.
Oh no!
And I was just, my jaw dropped, and I looked at it, at the tour manager, and I said, is that all? and 15 seconds went by, and it was just dead silence. And then the door creaked open, and he said, "Just kidding."
Oh man, your heart, like, oh boy.
So that kind of broke the ice.
Sure.
And I did go through the whole drool out of both sides of the mouth thing with him, and he said, "Look, get over it. Are you done? Let's get down to work." And really, from that point on, I never really had any more issue with being starstruck.
Yeah.
I just
more
realized
you do it, more you're around these folks.
I realized that
human
they
beings.
just want to be a regular Joe.
Yeah.
They don't want to be. That's what they get all day long.
Right.
They don't want that
From everyone else.
So after Paul Simon, you know, Marty called, gave me a phone number. He said, "Call this number." I called the number. "Hello, this is John." I said, "This is Dick Boak from Martin Guitars." And he said, "I've been waiting my whole life for this phone call." And I said, "I've been waiting my whole life to make it." So he was so gracious, and the whole idea was to do a black guitar in Johnny's honor, and we did the D42 JC with 3-piece back, beautiful guitar, and such a special thing. And you know, over the course of probably the last 5 or 6 years of Johnny's life, we would converse on the telephone, and I got to meet him at Telluride and present him with his signature.
Along with Steve Strom.
Yeah, right. That's right.
You know, he likes to tell the story where he was working for Martin for like a week.
Right.
And all of a sudden he's thrown into this at Telluride, and the first person he meets out there, he didn't know what to say. He just didn't know what to say. June Carter came out and was very nice.
And Stormin Norman Schwarzkopf was there, and it was quite something. So I've got a great photograph of that.
Yeah.
So the same thing happened, you know, maybe a year later. Marty called again and said, "I got another phone number for you."
He's a wealth of...
And he said, "Call this one," and I called it. And, and he said, "Hello, this is Willie." And so worked with Willie Nelson on kind of replicating the original N20 guitar that became Trigger. Of course, everybody wanted the whole
right.
and all those signatures and everything, but we made the guitar the way it would have been. And that was a very special project, and Willie came up to Easton, Pennsylvania, played the State Theater, and I met him there, and I have to say that I almost got arrested that evening, and I don't think we need to go too much further. You know what we're talking about.
Willie.
And but so many other musicians, from Tom Petty, Mark Knopfler, arguably my favorite guitar player, my great friend Steve Miller, and who I have to say, Steve has been more supportive and more involved with a lot of my projects, and just fantastic friendship grew out of that. So many different things. Joan Baez and
was there Sean Colvin?
Sean Colvin, Crosby, Stills and Nash, and
Judy Collins?
Judy Collins, and
on and on.
On. So
Bob Dylan?
Well, certainly had lots of contact with Bob, went to many concerts backstage, delivered instruments to his guitar tech for him, and made a lot of special custom shop things for him, including the negative guitar, which was a reverse image of a D28 herringbone, where all the white parts became black and all the black parts became white. But he never wanted.
Tweedy was interested in that guitar.
That's right. Yeah, hard to find. So Bob said, "I don't want to be obligated." So he loved the Martin guitars, and in fact, one of his very first guitars was a little Martin 0017. But he just didn't want to sign a deal where he felt obligated to play a specific guitar, because he had some Gibsons and different things. So with respect to artists that were difficult to convert into signature models, we looked at it as a mutual honor between the artist and Martin, that we were both being honored.
Sure.
Not that we were buying a endorsement deal.
Right.
And nonetheless, when you're on the level of a Dylan or a Neil Young or a Paul McCartney, they don't really need to do that. They don't need to have that, and so those three were the ones that embedded me. I do have to say that Mark Knopfler, as you well know, just a fantastic player. He has the touch. So working on the Knopfler model was particularly fun. And in the middle of having sent about 12 guitars over to England for him to try different sizes and different tone woods, that we landed on a basic design, and I started to develop it halfway through the prototyping. Somebody emailed me the front page of the London Times that had a little picture of a dinosaur.
Ah, yes.
And it said something to the effect of, new dinosaur species named after a rock star. And it was all about these paleontologists in Madagascar that had been doing a dig, and they weren't finding anything. So they had a boombox, and they put Sultans of Swing on the boombox, and were playing it, and they dug a little, and they found a femur of a dinosaur that had never been discovered before. They kept digging, looking for the rest of the skeleton. They dug for 2 more weeks, and they didn't find anything. They said, maybe we should put Sultans of Swing back on the boombox, and they did, and they found the rest of the skeleton right away. And so when you find a new species, they allow you to name the species. So the dinosaur was named Massacarius noflarius. and of course, they had a little picture, a little side view of the dinosaur, and I loved the story.
Sure.
And I scanned the little dinosaur, and I shrunk it down and created artwork for a little inlay that would go on the headstock under the Martin logo. And I did that a lot by removing established 1833 and nesting the inlay up there. It works very nicely. So after I had the artwork, I emailed it over to Mark and followed up with a phone call, and he didn't like it.
Oh, he did?
He didn't like it. He said, I've had quite enough of this dinosaur business.
Oh.
And all of his friends were calling him a dinosaur,
oh, yeah.
and he was getting constant ribbing from everybody. And so he just had enough of it. And so I was disappointed, but I was flying over to England on my way to the Frankfurt show, and I decided to spend a day in London and visit Olympia Studios, where he was recording. And he invited me there, and I got in very early in the morning into Heathrow and cabbed over to Olympia, got there about 10 o'clock, and they were already behind glass recording. He was recording a Hank Williams song with Emmylou Harris. Stopped the recording, and he came out and gave me a hug, and he said, would you like a cup of tea? And served me tea, and would you like lemon or milk? And he brought a chair, and he set the chair down between himself and Emmylou, and with my tea, and he said, now don't rattle the cup. And they went about their recording, and it was just the most amazing time that I've ever had. And so afterwards, he said, Emmylou and I are going to work on the vocals. Why don't you go have some lunch? And I went down to the cafeteria and got a salad. About 15 minutes later, he came down with Emmylou. And I figured, well, he's going to sit with her. But he came over to my table and he said, do you mind if I sit with you? And it's just the way he is,
yes.
You know?
Yeah, we know that.
And
don't we?
Yeah, we went to sit. So,
what an honor.
Went through the whole specs, and I said, I know you don't like this dinosaur, so we won't use that on the headstock or anything, but I have an idea. And I had mocked up laser engraving the dinosaur onto the front block. Mm-hmm. So I explained to him, I showed him what it would look like, and I explained that it would be inside the sound hole and that people would have to discover it just like the paleontologists.
That is so clever.
And on the front block it said Massacarius noflarius in italics, just like they do. Yeah. And he said, that's brilliant.
It is brilliant.
And he loved that. He loved that we were hiding a story. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we did. And to me, that's, I love having the personal connection, and I love having these fantastic stories about virtually every project. So
Truly amazing.
100 projects later, and you know, it got to the point where I felt, well, we've kind of played that card, but it was a great card to play.
Oh, it certainly was.
And we still do signature models from time to time, but not with the frequency that or fervor that I brought to it.
That was a really fertile period of growth there, and different artists from all different genres of music. And
well, really, what it was really about for me was reclaiming the heritage of Martin guitars in popular music, and you know, just about anybody that's anybody in the recording world plays Martin guitars, and so I think we recaptured it nicely.
Absolutely.
And now we have an artist relations department that actually interfaces with artists instead of sending them away. You know, so that's important, and it was you know, one of the best aspects of my job.
There you have it, folks. Stay tuned for part 4 of our interview with Mr. Dick Boak from Martin Guitar.